Hello, I'm Alan Kohler, founder of Eureka Report, now part of Intelligent Investor, finance presenter on ABC News and a columnist for The New Daily for one more week.
One more week? And I'm James Thomson, senior Chanticleer columnist at the Australian Financial Review, hopefully for more than 1 week.
And we are
The Money Café.
Yeah, no, I'm finishing up The New Daily and going to write for the ABC's website next year.
Okay. That's exciting.
Well, it is, yeah.
Yeah, column a week or more?
Yeah, column a week, same thing actually.
Beautiful.
Same Mondays, each Monday, column in the ABC's website. So
Great.
that's the deal.
Great. Excellent.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'll only have 2 employers instead of 3.
Well, obviously, I am your employer. I'm more of your employer now. We all are. So we're happy to have you on board.
Precisely, that's right. I'm glad to be
Is
working.
it still 12 cents a day?
It used to be 8 when I was
All right.
well,
Now you're on board for a column. It's probably more 30.
No, I'm a bargain.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so let's talk about interest rates. RBA Dovish Pivot.
Dovish Pivot. Was
Dovish
it a pivot?
Hey?
Was it a pivot, do you think? Or it was definitely dovish.
Oh, that's what everyone calls it.
I
You know,
know.
like dovish. The word dovish implies that they were leaning more towards interest rate cuts, and hawkish is leaning more towards interest rate hikes.
Yes.
For those who perhaps are wondering about those words.
It's an interesting interpretation, though, isn't it? Like, everyone's getting excited about this dovish pivot because Michelle Bullock, the RBA governor, essentially confirmed something that nobody thought was going to happen anyway, and we're all like, oh, dovish pivot. Nobody thought interest rates were going to go up.
No, but the reason they talked about it as a dovish pivot is because they took out a sentence
Yes.
from the statement that had been in the past few statements, which was that we need to be vigilant and we can't rule anything in or out, right? So that was in the last few statements. That sentence was in the last few statements, and it disappeared this time.
But everyone had ruled out a hike anyway.
Well, yes, of course, but it's a question of what's the Reserve Bank saying?
I know.
And everyone kind of reads the chicken entrails about that.
Yes.
You know, and so...
You know what, though? I'm suddenly feeling slightly better. I thought all hope was lost on my prediction of a February cut, which I've had for like a year and a half. Now I feel like suddenly there's a chance again.
Yeah, and I'm in a bit of trouble
Maybe.
with my prediction that there won't be.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, I think, well, the market odds of a February rate cut are now up to 75%, which was before Tuesday, it was 60%.
Yep.
I mean, you know.
I wrote this week, like it's endlessly fascinating when the first cut's going to come. I totally get that. But isn't the more interesting question how much they're going to cut from
that's
here?
right. And I thought your column on that subject was spot on.
Yeah.
It was really good. And the market is predicting, and you said in there, that it looks like to being like 3 or 4 cuts up to, of 0.75 to 1%, right? If that's true, if that's what happens, it'll be the shallowest easing cycle in history.
Yeah. Which I don't think anyone's really thinking about, are they?
No, that's right.
So now, I think you've said before that the it's not unnatural that rates would sit around 3.5% or 3.6%, which is where they would get to. But the average in the decade before the pandemic was 2.6%, and there's a bit of a gap there. Which
but that's a really aberrational kind of
not for most
decade.
people.
The 25-year average of the cash rate is 3.5%.
Yeah.
Which and so the cuts that we're talking about from 4.35 would in fact bring it down to average.
Yes. But I don't reckon people are used to the average. Certainly a lot of borrowers who borrowed in, I don't know, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, they're not used to that.
No, that's true.
Even 2020.
And because house prices have gone up so much, everyone's borrowing so much more. So, the same interest rate has much more of an impact on their spending.
I guess people have adjusted to the current rate, so, it's not going to be that much of an adjustment.
Not everybody has. Let's face it. Come on.
That's right. There'd be plenty of people hoping, they're going to go back down to where they were.
Yeah.
I think it's just a bit of an interesting psychological
No,
test.
in fact, I think one of the great mistakes of the Reserve Bank, which doesn't get talked about enough, I think, is that they did cut interest rates to 0.75 before the pandemic.
Yeah.
Which is why, those interest rate cuts in the 5 years leading up to the pandemic are why you talk about the 2.6% average over the past 10 years.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the reason. The thing is that the economy wasn't going into recession at that time. The only reason the reason they were cutting interest rates then was because inflation was less than 2%.
Yeah, right? They wanted to get it up a bit.
Inflation was around 1.5 on average, and they were trying to get it up. Well, and I was writing at the time, this is crazy. I mean, what's wrong with 1.5% inflation? It's fine.
Yeah.
Come on. And in fact, so the pandemic hits in March 2020, and the cash rate's 0.75. I mean, they were absolutely stuffed.
Yeah.
I mean, they had to try and rescue the economy, tipping over the abyss with a cash rate of 0.75. So they had to cut it to 0.1 and then carry on about how it wasn't going to change for 3 years, which was the next big mistake they made.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now Stephen Koukoulas and a few others are saying that they're now making another big mistake by not cutting more.
What do you make of that?
Earlier. Well, look, I tend to agree. I think that the fact that the per capita disposable income is crashing, is something they should take account of. But the truth is that their mandate refers only to inflation and unemployment. It's got two parts of the mandate: keep inflation down and maintain full employment. So there isn't anything in the mandate that talks about per capita disposable income.
Yes.
Right? I mean, so what that means is that the Reserve Bank is not in any way focused on the working poor.
Yeah.
It's only focused on
the aggregate.
The unemployed, right? People who've lost their job.
Yeah.
So if unemployment doesn't go up much, which it hasn't done, it's gone up from 3.5 to 4.1%, which is not really enough, and it's still below what the Reserve Bank regards as full employment.
Yeah.
Then the Reserve Bank is not mandated by its act to do anything about it.
Yes. Yeah.
And they've actually officially taken out the clause in the objectives to look after the prosperity and welfare of the Australian people.
But their view, I guess, would be that cutting rates now would risk an increase to inflation that would hurt the working poor more over time.
That is, of course, what they...
Yeah, they would say that.
That is absolutely what they say. That's right.
So that's the balance.
So we have to hurt the working poor now, so as not to hurt the working poor in the future.
Yes, but I guess they look at the unemployment rate and say, well, the working poor are still working, so it's okay with us.
Exactly. That's exactly what they're saying. We're only worried about unemployment, everybody. So just suck it up.
Yeah. They're in a bind. They're in a bind, and I think you look at the GDP numbers from last week. The problem is productivity is so crappy that every little thing that we do to try and stimulate the economy rolls into inflation so quickly.
Well, that's it, and we should probably explain why the lower productivity. The fact is, the productivity hasn't changed for about 5 years.
No,
and it's fallen. It went up and then it fell again. And why that's a problem? The answer is because it means that everything flows straight. Any increase in costs goes straight through to prices.
Yeah,
they can't. The businesses don't absorb anything in increasing productivity. That is to say, wages.
Yes.
So any wage increase, which are what are wages growth running out of now?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
3 or 4%. So
3.5, I think.
Yeah, any increase in wages goes straight through to prices because there's no increase in productivity to absorb any of it. That's the economic theory, anyway.
Yeah. No, they're in a bind.
Moving along, what do you think of Shayne Elliott? I got the sense you thought he was sacked.
No, I don't think he was sacked, but he's been there for 9 years. That's a long time. No, I don't think he was sacked. I was surprised. I thought they might want him to stay a bit longer while this ASIC's still investigating this bond trading drama that they've had. but I guess they've got a long notice period, so to speak. He's going to be there. Shayne's going to be there till July until the new guy, Nuno Matos, arrives. He currently works for HSBC or is finishing up at HSBC. So I'm a little surprised at the timing. I thought they might wait until this ASIC matter was cleared up before moving on the CEO, but...
So do you think that the two internal candidates, right?
Yep.
Miley Carnegie and someone else?
Mark Whelan, the boss of institutional banking.
Right. So how disappointed are they going to be?
Oh, they'd be very disappointed. I mean, do you want to have the best result for a board is to have internal candidates come through and take the job. That says that you've got succession right. Not having that, going to an outsider says succession hasn't quite worked as you'd hoped. But Mark Whelan was probably out of the running once this bond trading scandal emerged.
Is it his fault?
It's in his division, so that makes it hard to appoint him with that cloud hanging over that division for the moment. Miley Carnegie, I think she would be disappointed, yeah. She's running the retail bank, and she's also in charge of this whiz-bang tech platform that they're developing called ANZ Plus, which sort of promises a lot. It's a slow grind to get this thing up. It's going to last them for 20 or 30 years.
She was at Google, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So, do you think she's become a banker now?
I think so, yeah. I mean, she's been there for a long time.
Will she go off and run another bank?
Not sure, yeah. I mean, the chances of running another bank, we've got Matt Common, he's been now been there for 7 years, but all the other banks the other two banks have had CEO changes. Bendigo's had a CEO change. I guess Bank of Queensland's looking around, but you wouldn't want to run that place, I don't think. That's a tough job. Very tough job. So
maybe she can go and run HSBC.
Maybe. They do have a new CEO, that's why Nuno was available.
That's right, because he missed out.
So,
yeah, right. That's right.
Yeah.
Just before we move on to questions, let's talk about the Murdoch case.
Yes,
in
classic.
Reno.
Oh man.
So Rupert and Lachlan lost.
They did. Yep.
Which means that when Rupert dies, the trust stays the same, with all four children having one vote each.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Which means that unless Prudence changes sides, or one of the others changes sides, it's going to be 3-1. Because the three of them,
possibly.
Elizabeth, James, and Prudence were all against Rupert and Lachlan in court, right?
But they were, Are they against Rupert and Lachlan, or were they against any changes being made that would have diminished their influence?
Yeah.
I think it's probably the latter.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure you can say when Rupert dies, they'll vote against Lachlan. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Who knows what sort of arrangements could be got to.
But anyway, Rupert and Lachlan have said they'll appeal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the next appeal...
should be good at Christmas, shouldn't it?
So the next appeal goes to something called the District Probate Court of Nevada.
Right. Familiar with their work?
Well, I presume it's like the full bench.
Yeah, I guess
so. This judgment was from an individual commissioner.
Yes.
Of probate. I can't remember his name, but he's written a 90-page judgment.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And the excerpts we've seen are deliciously flowery. You know, he's quoting Succession and making jokes, and I love it. I love the US judges and the US legal.
No, well, a mate of mine's a judge. And he regards himself as a writer.
Right.
So judges are writers.
Yeah, that's true.
And this bloke in Nevada obviously regards himself as a writer.
Yeah, 96 pages, you beauty.
He's written a bloody
short story.
Well, it's not that short.
A novella.
It's a novella. Exactly.
But look, I mean, the interesting thing for me, you know, everyone loves this stuff because it's sort of everyone's family drama played out in court. That's great fun and stuff. But the interesting thing for me is if you're an investor in Fox and News Corp, they're actually going along swimmingly at the moment. News Corp's up 55% this year.
Entirely because of REA.
Sorry, 33%.
Because of REA, right?
Oh, and a little bit of this Dow Jones business they've got, which is a bit of a sort of secret hidden gem that obviously owns the Wall Street Journal. But the other thing Dow Jones owns is this sort of big information factory. So if I employ you, you know, I'm working for some big corporate and I employ you, I'll go to Dow Jones and check your bona fides and make sure you're, you know, you've got no criminal record and all that sort of thing.
Really?
Yeah.
They do that.
It's a great business. Great business. $600 billion US of EBITDA. It's a cracking business. And so News Corp's going up 33%, Fox is up 55%. There's a guy, the Fox CFO was saying this week, their ratings since Donald Trump won, gone from 50% of cable news to 70%.
Jeez.
So both these businesses are flying along, right? They're going pretty well. But if you're a long-term investor thinking 5 years ahead, are you worried about, well, who's going to be running the joints in 5 years' time? I think you are. I think that's the important part of this case. You don't quite know whether the direction of the company will be maintained.
Well, presumably Fox ratings have gone from 50 to 70% because it's right wing.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's of the moment, right?
It's of the moment. It's
totally
supporting Donald Trump, etc.
But think about how they're changing their advertising rates as that share increases.
No, of course.
Yeah.
No, but the purpose, it seems to me, of Rupert and Lachlan's case is to preserve the right wing nature of Fox.
Yeah.
Among other things.
Yes, I think among other things that's right. Yeah.
But I suppose it's just so Lachlan can keep running it.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but
the argument they're making in court is that James, Elizabeth, and Prudence would make it not as right wing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that would be damaging to its financial prospects.
I think not as right wing as whether they run it differently, and I think that's, as an investor stepping back from the fun of the drama, that's what I'd be thinking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the stock didn't go down the other day.
No.
When the loss appeared. When the judgment came out.
Which I think says that investors trust the Murdochs to muddle through and figure this out. Which, let's face it, there's been plenty of family dramas in the past, and they've generally muddled through and figured it out. So, yeah, it's fascinating though.
All right. Before we get to questions, here's a quick word from our sponsor.
Get a head start on your financial goals for the new year with InvestSmart. Invest in any of their capped fee portfolios and they'll add a $100 bonus to all new accounts opened and funded in December 2024. Whether you're after conservative, high growth or global exposure, you'll find a portfolio to suit your goals. Visit investsmart.com.au to learn more. Remember, past performance isn't a promise of future success. Terms and conditions apply.
First question from Adam. My long-term plan has me not retiring before 60, currently 41. We should say, Adam, we cannot give personal advice. So, this is not personal advice. I'm weighing up options for equity release from my principal place of residence. Do you know if it's possible to release equity as a tax-deductible debt for investment and roll the funds into super? Then you'd have the loan as a tax deduction, gear up my super, more time in the market instead of sacrificing over a longer period and not pay interest on the profits. I'm not quite sure what you're talking about, Adam, but yes, it is possible to borrow. It is possible to borrow more on your house. That is to say, use up some of your equity, and then you use that money to invest. That is true. But the question of whether you can put into super has to do with the super caps, which are currently 25,000.
I think it's higher, 32 or something like that.
Right. Okay, I can't remember.
Please seek advice.
Please seek advice. Yeah, that's right. But so you can put a certain amount into super as a non-concessional contribution into super. You need to look up what the caps are because we can't remember. But there's a limit on how much you can put into super. But that's if you want to do that, fine. Just be aware that borrowing money is taking a risk.
And the other thing that strikes me, without knowing the technicalities, Alan, is it's very different borrowing against your house and putting it into an ETF that you can access if something in your life changes. You get sick or you need to do something. Getting the money out of super would be much more difficult, I would imagine.
Yeah. That's true.
That would be
there's a trade-off for super. You're getting a tax break. It's only taxed at 15%, but it's hard to get out.
You got 19 years or more that you just got to juggle that for. So interesting. Tay says, I'm a new listener and loving going through the back catalogue. All mistakes are Alan's. I wanted your general advice on prioritising paying off the mortgage quicker versus putting spare cash in the stock market in an index fund.
We just talked about that.
It's slightly different. I grew up with the advice to pay off non-deductibles first, but also advice to get into the stock market early. My mortgage rate is 16.9%. So 6.19%. So I would need stocks to go to approximately 8.5% to get a similar return to offsetting the mortgage. Actually, you'd need a better return than that because of the tax issues, wouldn't you?
Well, that's what she's talking about. She's calculating that as a as a result of her own tax rate, I presume.
Yeah.
So 8.5%. Yeah. Well, you certainly would have got that in the past 12 months. The market return in the past 12 months was 9.1%.
Yep. The one thing I've been thinking about with this question, and it relates back to Adam's question, Tay's already in the market via her super.
Yeah.
So this idea of getting in the market early, I mean, Tay's exactly right. But if she had a part-time job when she was a teenager, she was a teenager, she's in the market already. I mean, that's the great thing about super, right?
That's right.
So I don't know.
Take into account what you've got in super.
Yeah.
Think about that, whatever that might be.
And there might be a way, to Adam's point, or to the point we made with Adam, can you top up your super contributions? It gets you more into the market in a tax-effective way and keep paying your house off at a faster rate.
That's right. If you can do that, that's great.
Yeah.
George says, we've got a couple of questions on this thing, which is Digico, the IPO of Digico. I'm extremely annoyed, to say the least, that the country's biggest bank has deliberately chosen to shaft retail investors in favour of the big end of town. CommSec are appointed lead managers of the upcoming Digico IPO. When I asked, being a CommSec client, how I could access the float, CommSec informed me that retail clients like myself missed out because their broker allocation was all farmed out to sophisticated investors, which left none available for retail clients like me. Maybe CommSec can advise how many of these sophisticated investors took up only the prospectus minimum application of $200,000 worth of shares. So what was the other question on this?
And the other question is from George. He's saying, do you think Digico will perform similarly to another large recent float, Money Gomez, which its share price peaked at $42 recently, up 90% from its offer price? George, this is a hot float. So I don't feel like you've personally been hard done by. Lots of people have missed out on this float. It has been structured to mainly, the bulk of it has gone to retail investors. It's just gone to larger retail investors through the big broker networks.
Yeah, but is it the retail investors who are defined as sophisticated investors? Because there is a distinction within the definition of retail investors.
I don't think. I think it would have gone to the broker's largest clients first, and that's the such has been the demand that hasn't been much left over for people. Yeah, and I think
it's fair prediction to say that the broker's largest clients would have been sophisticated investors.
So I don't think.
Do you remember what the definition is?
Of $500,000.
$500,000, right?
So I don't think. I don't think these shares have been specifically marketed to sophisticated investors. It's more retail investors, and the larger retail investors have taken the windfall. Look, I don't know. This thing floats on Friday at midday. I don't want to predict what's going to happen, but it has been structured to go very well. It's the hottest sector in the global market is AI, data centers, and that sort of thing. It's been very carefully structured to create lots of demand like Money Gomez. So, it could do very well. I think there'll be a scramble to get shares. There's so few new floats. There's so few ways to access AI. It's a pretty good recipe for plenty of demand.
Yeah. So sorry, George. Sounds like you've missed out.
Yeah.
On a certain winner, but there you go.
Andrew says, great podcast. Well, sorry, I'm not saying it's a certain winner, but it looks looks like it's going to go well. Andrew says, great podcast. I recently read Alan's book on the housing crisis. He and a number of commentators have said it would be good to see the housing market stay at one level for a period of time. I'm struggling to see how that would work with the considerable leverage. Surely investors would not invest in housing if the capital gains were less than the interest rate.
Yes, well, Andrew has hit the nail on the head. This is the nub of the problem.
Yep.
because any investment, whether it's housing or anything else, has to return at least its cost of capital. Otherwise, why do it? You know, and with housing, the cost of capital is usually the interest rate you're paying. Alternatively, the opportunity cost of something else you could do with the money.
Yeah.
And so the cost of capital at the moment is 6.5% or something. That is to say, the interest rate, mortgage rate,
about that.
And that means that you're not going to invest in housing unless you think you're going to get 6.5% return. At least. You know, including a tax break from negative gearing or whatever.
And your rent,
But the thing is that the reason we're in this trouble, the reason we have a housing crisis, is because housing has gone up at 6% per annum for 25 years.
Yes.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
And so if housing keeps rising at the same rate as the mortgage rate, it's just going to get more and more unaffordable, and it's going to get more and more ridiculous.
Did you see that viral interview with Claire O'Neill, the Federal Housing Minister, on Triple J?
I did.
It was interesting. I mean, for those who didn't see it, the Triple J presenter, I'm not sure of his name, he basically said, don't you want house prices to go down to give young people a chance of getting in the market? And it's a very tough position to be put in. But she said, no, we don't want house prices to go down.
Yeah.
We want them to grow sustainably. I'm not sure what that is, but...
Well, the thing is that's you know, big picture. This is the problem. I mean, so sustainably? If you ask Claire O'Neill what that means, the answer is around about the same rate as incomes.
Yeah.
The problem is that house prices of the past 25 years have increased at double the rate of incomes.
Yeah.
6% versus 3%, and so therefore they just keep getting further and further away from incomes. But the trouble is, if house prices now increase at 3% per annum, the same rate as incomes roughly, then the increase in the worsening of affordability that's occurred over the past 25 years will get locked in.
Yeah.
It won't change.
Yep.
So what I've been writing is, well, okay, but we really need house prices. We don't want house prices to go down. So I would have said, if that bloke had asked me,
yes,
do we want house prices to go down? You'd say, no. We don't want house prices to go down. We just want house prices not to go up for a while.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we need incomes to catch up.
Someone from the party room would have been straight onto you saying, Alan, what are you doing telling that we don't want...
I know, that's right. Well, that's the problem. I mean, most people own a house.
That's it.
Most people own a house. Most voters don't want house prices to not go up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
House prices going up is nice.
Yeah, it's nice. That's right. You're up with Seamus.
Oh, am I? Okay. Well, with the recent and failed proposed changes to international student intakes and resulting bleating from the university sector, I can't quite understand why there is a seemingly universal view that our international student education sector is considered an export. While international students do pay exorbitant fees into university coffers, making their respective vice-chancellors very well paid, what other aspects of the sector could be called an export? Well, you're absolutely right, Seamus. The thing is that it's actually quite ridiculous, because the ABS, the Bureau of Statistics, simply estimates what foreign students spend entirely.
Yes.
Like on everything.
Yeah.
Their fees, their rent, and their food.
Yeah.
And everything, and call that an export.
Because it's being sold to foreigners.
Exactly, but most of the money they're earning here.
Yeah, okay.
They're making the money here, or a lot of the money anyway.
Yeah,
so,
you're with.
So the export part of it. I mean, any money that they bring in from overseas could be called an export.
Yeah,
but not what they make here, driving Ubers or whatever.
Yes, I guess so. Yes, there's a definitional problem, but I mean, what does it matter?
What are you talking about?
Like, if it's an export or a...
Of course it matters. The...
We want this industry, whether it's strictly defined as an export or whatever it's defined as, a service.
They keep calling education our second biggest export, right, after iron ore.
Well, they call tourism an export sector too. I mean,
sure, but people tend to bring money in for tourism. In this sector, foreign students earn money here. I'm just saying that it's not as big an export as the ABS says.
There you go, Seamus.
And Seamus is saying that too.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Mark says, can you possibly suggest any reliable way I could short Bitcoin? So many smarties have made a killing.
Now, here's your Bitcoin question.
Yeah, so many smarties have made a killing seeing a use for this thing that doesn't meet the definition of money. However, I am convinced I can also get rich by shorting it with $1 or $2, and I can feel the greed rising within me. Well, Mark, good news. Just get on Google and say, how do I short Bitcoin? I did it this morning. And plenty of people are already willing and able to take your money. Local providers, IG Markets, CMC Markets, they will let you buy options on Bitcoin. Just remember what Warren Buffett says about options. They are dangerous, dangerous things. Good way to lose lots of money very quickly. And yes, Mark, you might be right that that the smarties have got this wrong, and perhaps, but you just got to be careful of rushing against the crowd. Yeah, it's a possible way to make money, but be careful out there, Mark.
Yeah, well, I'd go a bit harder on that and say, Mark, do not short Bitcoin.
There you go. General advice only.
Do not short Bitcoin. Honestly,
we've had this discussion before, Alan. It's just hard to get a sense of what makes Bitcoin go up on one day or another.
Oh, yeah,
so
of course.
It's bloody hard to make sense of why it would go down on one day or the other.
It's completely impossible to value it.
Yeah.
I mean, you would only short something if you were sure that it was overvalued.
Yeah.
But you can't be sure that Bitcoin's overvalued because you've got no possible way of valuing it.
Well said. Well said.
Russell says, thanks for your recent discussion on my son's investment choices in his superannuation portfolio. As Alan suggested, we sat down and used the current return rates to extrapolate out and found he could be more than $400,000 better off using the high growth option in his account rather than balanced, socially conscious. Not to be sneezed at by a low-wage earner, and so he has made the change. His brother, who was with us at the time, quipped that he could then direct $100,000 of those extra earnings to a cause of his choice, with full control of where the money goes, thereby probably making a better contribution to society as opposed to the unconfirmed choice of a faceless fund manager.
Faceless fund manager, there you go.
We'll take that as a comment.
Stephen says, Alan, what are your thoughts on a policy where first home buyers don't need a deposit provided they can service their loans? The banks already take out lenders' mortgage insurance, and this could replace stupid government grants and schemes. Might drive up demand initially, but over time, fewer people would be renters and would cap rent increases. Because if your rent is high enough, you could just get a mortgage.
Well, yeah, I like this question because it's true that deposits are totally arbitrary.
Yeah.
I mean, the deposits are there to give banks a bit of a buffer in case the market goes down. But, the market has never gone down by 20%. That's the standard deposit at the moment, 20%, right?
Yeah.
The housing market has never gone down 20%. So maybe it will, I don't know. But I tell you what, though, Stephen, getting rid of deposits, which, theoretically they could do, would definitely drive the house prices up. And it wouldn't be just, a little bit. It might divide demand up initially, he says. Yeah. But it would be really a lot.
And I think the other thing is, like, where would you find the stock of houses? Like, fewer people would be renters, but fewer people might want to not rent anymore, but they would have to find a house. Like, you can't.
They could buy the house they're in, right?
Oh, I guess so. Yeah.
Arguably,
yeah.
Well, because
because it would be less attractive for investors. Yeah, good point.
Yeah. Dave says, thanks for the pod. Just as a discussion point, I thought I would put forward my theory on the implication of cutting the third RBA mandate to contribute to the economic prosperity and welfare of the Australian people. My speculation is that the RBA's wild use of the jawbone over the recent years is them exercising the third mandate. When their modelling determines what they need to intervene in the direction of the economy, they can either choose to adjust the cash rate or carry on with whatever rhetoric works to persuade people to voluntarily change their behaviour. Yeah, look, I understand what you're saying, Dave. My view is that the reason that the RBA talks and uses the jawbone, as you put it, is simply to pursue its inflation, pursue its inflation objective.
Yeah, although not in the pandemic. That was different, wasn't it? They were trying to instill confidence in the broader economy.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So there are. Dave's got a point. There are moments where the jawbone works for different reasons. I mean, it obviously was a mistake, but...
No, but what I'm saying is that the jawbone is a supplement to actual adjustment of the monetary policy. So it's not a separate thing. It's part of the same.
Generally, but I think Dave's got a point about in the pandemic, Stevens was saying rates aren't going to rise for a long time.
You mean Lowe?
Lowe was saying rates aren't going to rise for a long time because he was trying to instill confidence and worry about the prosperity and welfare of the people. So I get the theory.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last question from Jacques or Jack. Regarding unemployment not spiking like it did in the 80s and 90s, does this have something to do with the redundancy laws that now mean those who have been retrenched are set up with a good pay packet, sometimes a year's salary, that means they're burning through their money and won't be counted in unemployment data for a while? And if so, what greater impact does this have on productivity?
Interesting question.
Yeah.
Because the way they count unemployment is if you've got to be looking for a job to be counted as unemployed. And if you've got a big redundancy payout, you're probably not looking for a job for a while.
Yeah.
So he's probably right.
Yeah, there's something in that. I don't think they're not laws around redundancy though. Like you're not required to pay a year's salary, for example. Might be some companies have conditions around that. So, yeah, is it enough of a swing factor? I just think there's not enough people. There's not that many people losing their jobs for that to be a huge swing factor at the moment. I wouldn't have said.
I agree.
Yeah, but an interesting idea.
Yeah,
geez, the listeners are smart, aren't they?
Yeah, we've got such good listeners.
It is just like there's 4 or 5 left field ideas in there that we write columns and talk about this stuff. It's like that's really good thinking about the world in a different way.
Yeah,
well done, listeners.
Okay, so thanks everyone for listening to today's episode of the Money Café. Now, next week will be our final episode of 2024.
How good's this going to be?
And so I'll be joined by both James Thomson and Stephen Mayne. Send in a question to the Money Café at Eureka Report. It'll probably be a bit longer than usual, will it, Greg? Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, we might go for an hour or something.
An hour?
Well, what do you think?
Clear your calendars.
So please come along. We're now in the My Other Brother Cafe in Camberwell.
In Melbourne.
On the car park at Camberwell.
Yep.
Where the Camberwell market is held.
Yes.
Each Sunday morning. So to come along next Wednesday, 18th of December, 9:30 a.m, have a coffee and watch us if you want, and we'll say hello to you.
Yeah. Alan will sign autographs. Greg, the producer, will put on a powerlifting demonstration at the conclusion of the podcast.
Greg, our producer, is a powerlifter now.
He's an athlete.
He's suddenly growing pectorals.
Yes, he's looking fantastic. Anyway, we're rambling here. It's going to be great, though. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm Alan Kohler, founder of Eureka Report, etc.
And I'm James Thomson, senior Chanticleer columnist at the Australian Financial Review. See you in the car park.